Mr. President, and short answer is no. We're continuing to monitor within your communities, in and around the sinkhole, both water and air on the water, as well as in the communities. And if anyone has fear for flammability hazards associated with natural gas on their properties, of course, we're still offering that as well. But the bottom line is, it is still a very stable situation from a pollution standpoint, and there is no risk to your health from any pollution issues associated with this incident. So that's one thing that you all don't have to worry about.
Thank you. We ask you all to stay around afterwards if anybody has any questions for these two, or Mr. Turo with DOTD. What I'd like to do now is go directly to questions. There was a lot of information provided by the Shaw Group, as well as Mr. Cartwright here with Texas Brine. If there's any questions, we'll start fielding those questions, and then we'll ask them to stay around afterwards anyway, because many of you can come forward and look at the exhibits that he put out, and then maybe ask him individual questions. Y'all willing to do that for a while? Anybody have any questions from the floor? Let's start here.
Well, for the Shaw Group or Texas Brine, what is in the bottom of the cavern?
The question is, what's in the bottom of the cavern, to the best of your knowledge?
It's debris, but what kind of debris?
What type of debris? Did any of the analysis come back from the actual sediment that was taken from the bottom of the cavern?
Right. Yeah, we in one of the first trips into the well, we ran what's called a junk basket down, and we tagged the material at the base of the cavern and collected a very small specimen. That material was shipped out to Respect's lab in Rapid City, and the analysis came back, and I think it was 75 to 80% quartz. So it was and I've actually felt it. It's almost like a silt, real fine grained sand with a lot of clay in it.
Well, they said it's 1,400 foot of it to the bottom. Did y'all get all the way to the bottom again?
Oh no, we were not able to go all the way into the debris. We just took what we could collect right on the top.
Why didn't y'all drill? Why y'all hadn't drilled or anything?
Well, we didn't. The objective was to tap into the cavern.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. And let me just say, from a drilling engineering perspective, it would have been extremely difficult to drill inside a big cavern like
I
that.
understand that, but it's a way to do it. My point is that the cabinet's gonna be open and y'all cannot fix it no way. And if it's something happens to our health, then how we gonna know?
I don't know how to respond to that. I mean, it's the same material that was there naturally outside the salt mass, presumably. The best thing that we can do is precisely what we are doing, which is to contain and collect oil and gas. So, I mean that.
But we don't know what was in it to start with, what y'all tell us.
What was in the cavern?
Yeah.
The brine water.
Just brine water?
Brine water and diesel.
Well, one time the coach didn't put gas in it, and one time they did.
It was never used for hydrocarbon storage. The salt produced trace amounts of gas during the mining of the cavern. And that's common at Grand Bayou and other brine production wells.
Thank you.
Yes, and then we'll go to Mr. Hodges. Yes, sir.
Basically, you're telling us that the cavern can't be fixed, correct?
Mr. Heacock or either one. And the question is,
It can only be monitored, right?
the gentleman's asking that basically he's understanding that there will be no fix to this matter, just a matter of monitoring. Is that the scenario we're in?
The scenario that happened before could possibly happen again, even though we got all this monitors, correct?
The cavern can be fixed, okay? As for the long-term prospects of controlling the problem and everything else, we're still working on that. In terms of additional collapse in this cavern, it's probably unlikely because most of the mass to fill the cavern has already moved from outside to inside. We've only got about a quarter of the cavern is still full of brine. The rest of it's already filled with dirt. So I know it's been talked about on the internet and stuff that there may be another sinkhole developed somewhere out there. I think that's very, very unlikely because we've already got a zone up here of weak rocks. So if something were to happen down here, this weak rock's just going to move in and the sinkhole that's out there would probably just get bigger.
I have one question, and Dr. Kemp, when you gave the discussion about the size, how much sediment, and actually, what I'm gathering, you're saying is that there was an amount of sediment that actually came from the outside formation that infiltrated into the cavern. Is that correct? But then you said there's a discrepancy between that and the amount of fill material in the sinkhole. But the sinkhole is a void, not fill. So what you have is you have an outside void that doesn't match up with how much of the strata has actually moved into the cavern. So there's additional void space outside of the cavern that's unaccounted for. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
And I guess the question is, that unaccounted for space, and that was mentioned in the recent news article, what analysis are we going to do to make sure that an unaccounted for void space doesn't show up in as another sinkhole or subsidence in the community or anywhere else in that vicinity? That's what we want to find out.
Okay. First of all, the seismic work that was in the commissioner's order is the only way we've got to look at the collapse zone and look at it. Chris, could you bring that over so I can talk to it? What we've done is I've calculated the amount of missing mass, okay, in terms of how much mass.
And the missing mass would come from outside of the cavern.
Yeah, this was a lateral breach. It came outside in. We're pretty sure of that. What I did is, it's hard to see, but there's a green circle right here. That represents, if I take the entire missing mass and make a sinkhole big enough to fill it up, that's how big it is. The circle's right here. Okay?
To what depth?
To what depth? The depth would be 400 feet, and the sides would be laid back like this. Okay?
Do it one slope with it.
Yeah.
What?
Do it one slope with it.
Yeah. It's about it's actually about a 3 or 4 to 1 because I assumed that it's wet sand. So I've calculated that. And so the fear was, as we were looking for the missing volumes, if we have to get all the missing volume from shallow material, the sinkhole here is about this big. It's about 500 feet across. The diameter of that circle is about 1,500 feet across. And that coincides pretty well with the subsidence we're seeing on the west side of the sinkhole. And we're working on that problem right now. We know coming up with the volumes is important, but what I want you to understand is DOTD is surveying here. The road is not showing a lot of movement. That's consistent with the 1,500-foot diameter circle. In addition, it's not going to get over into the community. So to fill up all the void space, that's how big the circle is going to be, and it would be a cone-shaped type depression.
Does that include any bulking factor?
No, doesn't include bulking. The bulking would amount to about 20–30%. So this is just intact rock.
Absolute replacement.
Yeah, absolute replacement.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in layman's term, is that a junkyard fast fix? Is what I really, really want to know. I know you know what I'm saying.
Meaning that there's just an answer to give. And let me tell you something, I agree with you. This is the point we're at. We want to measure, like you said, we want a very well thought out explanation, and obviously we hope you're doing that. But obviously if this is unprecedented and never been seen before, how do we know that the sinkhole will just develop in one location and not develop somewhere else? And we have this misconception that everybody just rushing to get the people back in their homes. And the question is that, you know, we're doing everything we can to get back to home. The people don't, I don't think the people want a license to go back to their home if it's truly not safe. That's the issue. So we want everything analyzed from every factor, say if it's unknown. Now, I'm assuming in an all theoretical world, if that void space is specifically right underneath the sinkhole and it all opens up and in one area, that may develop as you say. But how do we know that void space is right there and not adjacent in other areas that may develop 500, 800 feet in either direction, which puts it in people's home way. And I think that's what's the concern, is that the junkyard, the analysis, you want it all considered. I guess in that other question, is that what the analysis is doing?
Basically, you're asking me if I'm lying to you.
No. You said assuming, and I think about that.
Okay,
Wait, let me finish. You're telling me you're only gone so many feet because your drill can't go all the way to the bottom, okay? So when that bottom, if something happens down in that bottom and comes up somewhere else, that's what I'm asking. I don't want a fast fix. I want to live till the Lord takes me, not when Texas Bride and Sequel takes me. End of subject.
Yes, sir.
I'm not asking you if you're lying. I want to roundabout the whole damn bullshit right there. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
This gentleman's first, though. This gentleman's first, then we'll come here. Yes, sir.
I think
I want to talk to you.
flaring is nice, but I don't think anybody's gonna be comfortable if the pressure drops unless we can figure out a way to get rid of the source.
Exactly.
And the source, you tell me, is a mass, production down there on the south of the cavern. We're gonna flare all that gas and keep flaring and flaring and flaring until it's all gone, so that we say we don't have any other gas. That's question number one. The second question was, this thing was filled with brine and diesel and Norm, which was a place of battery, okay? So it's liquid filled, all the way to the tip top. And you say the pressure comes from the side and built up enough that the wall collapsed. Well, that liquid, I mean, it won't compress. The liquid's not going to compress. Was the fissure, he said the top 2/3 of the cavern was good. Was the fissure outside of the wall that went up through the salt and got to the top? Or is there some place at the top as well that's breached in the cavern that we haven't recognized so far? Some kind of way, that liquid had to squirt out of somewhere. I mean, it didn't just, like if there's a vapor in there, it could have compressed. This material could have come up in there and filled that wall with fresh water. But the liquid, you can't do that, because it doesn't compress. So how did the brine get out the top of the cavern?